apologize to those that may be watching and to everyone else present for the late delay. But welcome back. Before we get started, sadly, there have been a number of tragic events that recently rocked our community. Before I recognize the land for which our meeting is being held, I would ask that the board and those present to observe a moment of silence as we pay respects and honor the tragic loss of 6 young adults in our community on August 27th, along with Toronto Police Constable Andrew Harlan, who died in the line of duty this week, and York Regional Police Constable Travis Gillespie, who died this week on his way to work. Thank you. The Barrie Police Service extends its deepest sympathies to the families and friends of the 6 young adults and officers Hull and Gillespie, and all the police services and first responders as they deal with these tragedies. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, it is customary to acknowledge the traditional territories and ancestral lands of our Indigenous peoples. We would like to acknowledge the sacred land on which the Barrie Simcoe Emergency Service Campus operates. It has been the site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the ancestral land of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabe Nation. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Williams Treaty. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Thank you. Everyone received in advance the agenda for today's meeting. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda for our September 15th meeting. Ms. Strong, Mayor Lehman, any questions, comments with respect to the agenda? Those in favor? Thank you. Are there any conflict of interest members would like to declare with respect to today's agenda? Seeing none, thank you. Also included in advance were our minutes of our open board meeting of June the 16th, 2022. Motion to approve those minutes. Councillor Thompson, Ms. Strong, any questions, comments with respect to the minutes? Seeing none, those in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Allen, who will walk us through quarter 2 typical report. Please, Deputy Chief.
Thanks, Chair. My pleasure. Tony's going to pull up the PowerPoint. Again, as I always do, I just want to thank our Manager of Records and Information Services, Nicole Lees, for her work on the background of this, and everybody else who contributed to the dashboards and the statistics. Thanks, Tony. The data, this is a slide that we've seen before. All the data is current as of August 12th. Again, I want to remind the board and anybody watching that the data is always subject to the influencers, whether it's proactive or reactive enforcement. Okay. Again, the data overview, we've been through a lot of this slide in the past, but I do want to bring your attention. We're going to speak about the provincial offense notices a little bit more this week. We're going to talk about property crime, specifically some of the things, the trends that we're seeing is relates to gas drive-offs. And we'll look at the 5-year comparison for each group, as we always do, to see what the trends really are over the long term. Calls for service. It's trending, a 5-year average is 17,437. So we are right in line with what we've seen over the past 5 years. No concern here. Most common call types for this quarter is 911 calls and 911 hangups. Occurrences and violations, just a reminder, unlike CAD, occurrences capture all police activity, not just calls that are put through CAD or computer-aided dispatch through our communication center. Our occurrences can also be generated from online self-reports as well as police-generated occurrences. Violations, as you see on the chart on the right, that signifies a contravention of the criminal code or other provincial statute. Our provincial offense notice slide this year, real easy to see in the yellow, 713. This quarter, or the second quarter, which takes us up till end of June, is low. We've seen a steady decrease, obviously, in this full year from when we compare it to last year. And when you look at the 5-year comparison, although it's a little blippy, mostly due to COVID, the numbers are definitely lower. We have talked in the last open meeting, and we've had discussions with the board. Redeployment of personnel has a big contributing factor to that, as we're trying to supplement the front lines. The other thing I want to talk about in the past times, our personnel were deployed during their downtime. We say go be proactive. They would hit like a hotspot for speeders and produce a number of tickets. As the board's well aware now, with our evidence-based policing model, we're now sending those officers to hotspots and designated areas within the city to have that coffee or write that report, and that 15 minutes in each of those places has a goal of trying to intercept, interfere, or prevent crime from happening in some of the hotter areas in our community. And we believe that that also has an effect on what we're able to do as far as proactive or going out writing provincial offense notices. Crimes against person, we also see an increase in the last quarter in this area, trending over the 5 years. It's not really out of whack, but we did do a drill down into this. We're seeing more assaults in commercial settings, probably mostly related to theft unders and apprehensions. We've also seen that some of the sexual assaults are up in commercial and residential settings as well. Commercial represents, the any of the stores, the Bayfield Strip, the downtown core, bars, restaurants, Walmart, Canadian Tire, or Bayfield Mall, Kozlov, and Georgia Mall. Property crime, very consistent numbers over the last quarter. The 2 quarters are fairly similar. The 5-year analysis doesn't show anything, but we have had, going to the next slide, I want to talk specifically to the gas drive-offs. It doesn't look like a lot of occurrences at 248 for the year up to August 1st this year. This goes outside of the first 2 quarters, but it was worthy. It has a statistical importance to our service, in that we've already surpassed what we had for the whole year of last year. Chief's undertaken to send a notice to the ministry. There is some avocation and there's some legislation, I think, paused that may look at some preventative measures, i.e. prepay. So we're still waiting and hoping that can happen. But of the 248, I'm comfortable saying that there's very little charges in these instances. Some people come back and they'll pay. Some are accidental, obviously some are on purpose. But as far as enforcement, not a lot happening there under the circumstance, but still a great drain on police resources. Drug offenses is also down this quarter, or for the whole year. You'll see in the 5-year slides. Definitely down. That could be related to a number of things. First and foremost, the redeployment of resources, where most of the drug offenses we lay on the street level, to use the slang, are proactive interventions. That said, we're working with the federal Crown now, who is in charge of prosecuting these matters, to look at ways to deal with straight possession so as not to criminalize those in the vulnerable sector. And we're focusing, having a greater focus on harm reduction. Criminal traffic violations, slightly down this quarter. Again, much of this is led by impaired driving, as you see, as the top contributor. It's important to note, and I know I said at the beginning of the presentation, but much of the criminal traffic violations are driven by the means we put at it, and you see those stats go up and down in the shorter time periods, depending on what we're doing as far as initiatives like RIDE. Other criminal code violations, again, we see consistently bail violations, fail to comply, breach probation, fail to attend court, show up there. But the good news is on the full first half of the year, it's trending down. So the drain on police resources is less, and we hope to see that continue. Miscellaneous section, there's nothing statistically significant to talk about. Again, you see the 911 calls up there. However, while StatsCan does not use this for any of their analysis purpose, we do in-house to better our deployment and delegate our personnel responsibly. This is just an update. The Diversions Program, we added this to the presentation a little while ago. We thought it was just important to share with the board. We're continuing to use the program. Every month is about the same amount of diversions. The charges are listed on the left-hand side, and you can see how many we're doing per month and comparing the 2 quarters. Very similar. One thing that we're able to do now, as we've been bringing this presentation in, is we are improving the analytics in this dashboard so we can report and drill down specifically into different areas. We couldn't give you a slide with the PONs being so low without sneaking outside of the first quarter. Councillor Thompson, you had asked some time ago about the noise complaints and what we're doing. So we did want to share with the board on the July 27th Barrie Police Initiative. We laid 50 charges on Project Noise, and of the 50 charges, 29 were specific to the loud mufflers. And August 12th, we did a race with the OPP and York Police in Barrie, and 81 charges were laid on that day. So we hope to see those show up in the next statistical report. We put on a note. It's great to get a note from the public that appreciate what we're doing. It's not lost on us. We see it in media from all police jurisdictions, and our service continues to support others, including the OPP and some initiatives that they got coming up as well. And subject to any questions.
Questions for the deputy?
Thanks very much, Deputy. Maybe just a little more color on the PONs. So that if we think this is personnel related, is that, or maybe it's for the chief, is this, our people are busy doing other things and PONs are lower priority, or is there some correction that we anticipate coming in the second half of the year? Is there something that happened in the first couple of quarters that would lead the numbers to be this low?
I can speak to that. Definitely, the personnel is not a concern, but a contributor to that. Having redeployed persons from active enforcement to actually doing radio calls and emergency calls on the road for service. We're going to have 2 more people in our traffic unit starting January, specifically for enforcement, to bring that team back up to full capacity. And it can't be lost on the board that when because PONs come from the front line, they come from our traffic unit as well. They're the 2 big drivers of reading of the PONs. But we're also asking those people to go and do the hotspots, the criminal hotspots where we're seeing the high crime areas. And this redeployment of those people, not to take thunder away from the community safety well-being or some initiatives that Deputy Johnson's leading, is also showing good results, which would counter any kind of bad results people are seeing with the traffic initiatives.
Okay. The other very potentially, I guess, good news story, the huge drop in drug offenses. Does that reflect any change in our policing, or do we think that's a community change?
Oh, our stats aren't suggesting that the drugs aren't out there.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But we've only laid half as many charges this year, so why do we think that's happening?
Yeah, so we're working with the federal crown. There's a push for decriminalization from the OACP, the CACP.
And
it is
mayors.
actually, and mayors. So working with the federal crown in that area to destigmatize health issues, decriminalize health issues, look at,
Interesting. So there's
wraparounds.
different choices being made by crowns in some cases.
I would say it's a combination of the societal and the crowns and what's happening in the justice system, not criminalizing those that are vulnerable and have addictions. So we're seeing what I would call the straight possession offenses. We're not laying those charges. Our focus is on the trafficking and distribution charges. So they're lengthier, more complex investigations to that traditional arrest charge on the street. So there is still interaction with our members and those individuals that are in possession of illicit drugs, but we're looking at alternative solutions to them, focusing on the health of the community, health of the individuals.
So so this isn't necessarily calls, it's charges.
Yes.
So that's why we're seeing that outcome is down. It's not necessarily that the issues any less in our community, it's that the outcomes are different. Thanks, Vivian. That's a good report. Thank you.
Sure, some questions.
Yeah, my questions follow in line with Mayor Lehman's questions. And with the PONs, and you did talk about this in your presentation, like when officers had 15, 20, 30 minutes, often they went to write tickets and now they're going to the hotspots. And when you answered Mayor Lehman's question, you said that there's good results. But my question is, how are we measuring those and evaluating them? Like, when I see people writing tickets and have PONs, I know exactly what the results are of that time. Whereas when I'm sending somebody to a hotspot to sit there for 20, 30 minutes, how do I evaluate as a board member and as a service what the impact of that is?
So we are looking at the calls for service, and as you've seen, we measure the harm score for the types of crimes that are being reported in these areas. We pick our, for this explanation, our top 10 areas with the most calls for service that are affecting our community the most. So we are geocoding those areas, and we are encouraging our officers on their downtime to go into those areas. We know exactly when they go in, and we know we ask them to stay there for 15 minutes. The theory being their visibility in that area will deter crime from happening. And so we look at those spots, and we look at the calls for service before we start doing the hotspot, and then we look at the calls for service after we've been deploying officers to the hotspot, and we're seeing the difference. And in some areas, we're seeing that these are trending down.
Right,
In a big way.
That's good. And it's like we don't capture that information on this type of report. So it's good to get that supplemental information from you to better understand that. And my question is similar really for the drug offenses, and I completely understand your answer. I mean, it's something obviously the community continues to be concerned about. And my question, I guess, is like, if we're not arresting people or laying charges, are we doing something? Like, are we helping them towards a community organization?
Absolutely.
Like, what are we doing in that interaction?
Yeah, absolutely. Our community safety well-being, especially, are every single person they touch. They're making sure that they have the connection with the community resources that are needed for whatever it is that is making them vulnerable that day. We have a long way to go to working with these the people that we collaborate with to help with this, but the efforts are there definitely by the Barrie Police Service to get those connections made. We are not the health experts or the addictions expert that can help solve that problem, but arresting them and putting them in jail isn't solving it either.
Yeah, and I know it can take like a number of touch points, whether that be with police or other organizations, that I mean, if you connect with the same person on maybe even a dozen occasions, and then like that one time might be the time that they access the help that they need.
And I think, Mayor Lehman, you spoke about treatment. Treatment is a challenge not just in our community, but across the province. And when we do make that touch point and they're interested in entering into treatment, we have to get them into treatment then. Or I'm not saying we as the police, but society needs to get them into treatment at that point, because we have such a short window, because that willingness can change rather quickly. So we're working with all the social organizations that support individuals that are vulnerable to mental health and addiction problems.
Thanks, Chair. I'm loving this conversation. I'd like to just pick it up. One point that both, I believe, well, the Mayor, Lynn, and Ms. Strawn and the Deputy referred to, and that's the community partnership programs and investments. The city recently made an announcement regarding an investment in some key strategic areas within the community for some recreational courts, for example, across the city that I believe there was attending some great reception to it. And what I'm curious of is that type of an investment that the city is able to make, while that can have and will likely have a very positive impact, is there opportunity for those community partners, being those who manage the properties, the police service and the city and any other partners, to build upon that through programming and things like that to help guide fruitful, successful habits and lifestyle through opportunities. We see a lot of that gets a lot more attention south of the border, programs like that, and I'm just curious what the deputy's thoughts are on something like that.
We see all those opportunities as much as we can. This has been something that has been sort of cycling around through at least the Barrie Police and the greater actual national police Chiefs Forum, is that we need to engage in these programs. We have things like also the Barrie Health Accord, which is going to reboot. We have initiative that Inspector Gates and the Chief are leading with the Justice Centers and the one-stop shop. Hopefully one day can tie all our collaborators together to heal the community of some of the things we see. But the key is to get the investment, and I mean not just financial investment, but the emotional and personal commitment to actually see these outcomes through to fruition. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely want to engage in everything that we can. But we have to know where our lane is and where the handoff is, and we need those community partners to step up and pick up, and they're the ones that are truly going to solve this problem.
Thanks, Deputy. Just in follow-up, something specific in your report, you were referencing the gas drive-offs, the pump drive-offs. As you were speaking to it, it sort of reminded me of, it hasn't been as much that I'm aware of lately, but certainly in the last couple of years, we saw a rise or a spike in more of the drugstore, grocery store style of similar, I believe you would refer to it as low harm or no harm type of an incident. It's still an offense, but it's not creating physical harm. When a member of the community, and I did hear you talk about, going towards recommending legislation changes, et cetera, but when a member of the community, like corporate member of the community, has an opportunity to essentially implement a zero cost measure like prepay, there's no new equipment required whatsoever. It's just lock the pumps and make it prepay. What is the service's response to that, or what is our attitude or approach towards that? Obviously, we're not going to wash our hands and say, too bad, it's your problem. However, what's our attitude there?
So I want to make sure I understand your question. Are you asking me what's our attitude or response for those who won't change over to prepay?
I guess what I'm saying, I guess I'm saying is, if the industry has the ability within a split second to, or even on a case-by-case basis, forget legislation, to implement prepay at zero cost, and they're choosing not to do it. it's kind of open-ended there, but I mean, how do we, I guess we're not prioritizing those responses because they have the solution at their fingertips and they're choosing not to implement it. What's our attitude there?
No, our attitude is it's a citizen in our community reporting a crime and they deserve to be get the full service of the Barrie Police. I think our service is instrumental in resolving a lot of those issues so they become unfounded instead of criminal offenses for the good people that forget. But it is very difficult to investigate. Even if you have a license plate of a car, if that car is not registered to the person or it's a stolen car or any other number of factors, it's a lot of resources to go into a tank of $30 of gas. But notwithstanding that, we take every report and we investigate each one to its fullest.
Chief Deputy, while I appreciate it is absolutely deserved, it is an offense and that's happened. Is there an opportunity through the community safety and well-being to do an education program? Maybe if we are seeing a spike at gas stations, they do other initiatives. Could this be an initiative that they look at going and educating retailers?
Yeah, they can. They do other education initiatives with retailers as it relates to the thefts and the trespassing and other things we've seen at the Bayfield Mall. But where I would say we would prioritize our resources is when it comes to the education piece. Where's the education more needed? Do we need it more with the vulnerable sector? Do we need it more downtown? Or do we need to have it with the gas stations? But we will continue to lobby. The OACP will continue to lobby the government for that legislative change, which should happen right across Canada. It is 100% preventable, as you said.
Thank you, Deputy Chief and Chair.
Legislative, because it won't happen voluntarily. The first gas station that does it, no one else will go there. So, so they're not going to do it themselves. I think just in the sake of time, Deputy Chief Al, thank you very much for your report. We always look forward to the updates, and this is a good snapshot of what is going on. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. You're welcome.
Moving on, then, there were 3 items in our consent agenda. Staff acknowledgements, public complaints, and public budget variance, all of which were provided to the board in advance. Is there any item anyone would like pulled or any questions for the chief or others with respect to the 3 items in the consent agenda? Seeing none, a motion to receive the consent. Mayor Lehman, Councillor Thompson. Further questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Chief, I'll hand it over to you to introduce to us Ms. Dees, who's going to walk us through some hate crime, cyber crime, organized crime, and crime severity index, please.
Exactly. So we have Ms. Nicole Weed here with us today, and she will provide an overview on 2 of the documents that's based on Statistics Canada and their annual plan to some key initiatives. Pass it on to you, Nicole. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, good afternoon, board. Most people familiar with the documents that we've been provided continually for a few years now.
Excuse me, Nicole, could I just ask you to come closer to the table to ensure that everybody hears you that is joining us remotely? Thank you. Thank you. And while you're getting organized there, I just wanted to thank Nicole for some of the statistical reports that she, other statistical reports that she does. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, these reports have been provided in the past to the board. It's just, I'll briefly summarize them. They are a few focused areas from Statistics Canada to compare crime severity index across Canada by police jurisdictions, by our census metropolitan areas. So I'll do the general report first, which is not the one focused on the hate crime, cyber crime, but just an overall. That one is gives us a comparison of census metropolitan areas, or CMAs, for overall crime, violent crime, and non-violent crime. And that's using a weighted index, which we've talked about in the past. So the Barrie CMA is one of 35 across Canada and includes Barrie, parts of Innisfil, and Oro. The CMAs are areas that are identified as similar in population, with certain types of population flow in terms of urban density and integration into that community. We, or the Barrie CMA, ranked 33 out of 35, meaning we're third best for overall crime severity. Keeping in mind that that is only amongst those 35 communities. We were also 33rd in 2020. We also remained consistent from 2020 in placing 29 out of 35 for nonviolent and 35 out of 35 for violent crime severity. Another way that they compare the crime severity is by police jurisdictions of over 10,000 population. Barrie Police is one of 326 jurisdictions identified. That includes other municipalities as well as some OPP detachments as well. In 2021, we placed 170 out of 326. In 2020, we positioned at 186. So it's demonstrated that we're consistently in a positive position when looking at our comparators. Important to note here is that this is not apples to apples. It's a less meaningful way to compare than the CMAs, in my opinion, given that those jurisdictions would vary greatly in their demographics and the types of crime those jurisdictions and communities may experience. So that's a summary of those two key comparators. Going on to the other report, which is hate, cybercrime, and organized crime. Those three areas are areas that Statistics Canada highlights every year. Hate crime is specific to, can be in relation to property or people, and may be motivated by race, religion, ethnicity, age, or any other similar personal factor. For the Barrie CMA, so again, this is not just in relation to Barrie Police, but the Barrie CMA, 17 incidences of hate crime were identified, up from 12 in 2020. In the city of Barrie, this is usually reported mischief, specifically graffiti, motivated by race or ethnicity, so largely non-violent in nature. Hate crime in Canada is up by 72% from 2019 to 2021. Cybercrime was up for the Barrie CMA as well, from 279 in 2020 to 393 in 2021. As noted in the report, 2021 numbers for Canada were just over 70,000, up from 62,000 in 2020. Ontario numbers for 2021 were 28,500, up from 25,900 in 2020. Both of these areas, hate and cybercrime, were identified by Statistics Canada as being significantly exacerbated by the pandemic, and they have lengthy articles on that across Canada, all available online. Organized crime is reported just as one national number, which for 2021 was 10,227, which is actually slightly down from 2020 at 10,892. That's just a very brief overview of those highlighted statistics.
Questions from the board? Mayor Lehman.
Yeah, two quick questions on the hate crime. Were there any violent incidents? Do they distinguish?
There were. That would be something that, so out of the 12, I would then break it down by what of those were actually Barrie Police incidences, and then would break that down by type. Right. If my memory serves me correctly, I believe there were a few assaults, I believe they were.
Yeah, okay. And then on the overall CSI, totally agree with you that CMA is much more relevant than the 300 and some odd, only not just because we score better, but my question is why? And that's, you know, I'm assuming that the 150 or so jurisdictions that score better are much smaller.
Right.
Can you actually pull out the jurisdiction for major cities? Like, have you got the full data on this for all 326?
Yeah, we can.
That'd be something I wouldn't mind seeing as a follow-up. Like, if you pull, we always talk about the 12 large services, and then there's us and everybody. Like, if you pulled the 25 largest services, or I guess in Ontario, but it'd be interesting to see across the country. I mean, pick whatever criteria you want. I guess my point is, if we're still scoring way ahead of almost all the large or medium-sized cities in the country, then it confirms the other data. Whereas if we don't, then there's something about our CMA that's probably making us score better, like spring water is the most peaceful place in the universe or something. I don't know. But I'd just like to know that, because we get these numbers every year and they always have a similar pattern. And I'm
Right.
guessing it's because of all the small towns that go into this.
Yes, so there's a
326.
very significant difference between a police jurisdiction of over 10,000 and the CMAs, which are over
Right.
100,000 in population. So huge differences there. So we can certainly, as follow-up, just pull maybe the top 25 police jurisdictions and kind of do a comparison
Yeah,
of that.
or how we score against other jurisdictions with a population over 100,000, if you can do that, something like that. That'd be interesting to know. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Thompson, please.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Please, great report, thank you. Just a quick question. In 17, in our region and stuff, is there any one targeted group that we should be concerned about?
So, and just anecdotally from looking at the data.
And I don't need you to identify it, just a yes or no.
Sure, I would say yes, there's probably 2 that would be more prevalent than others.
Now, maybe a question to you, Chief. With that information, is there anything the service is doing a little bit more to protect those groups, or educating to, like help them report it, or, being involved in their communities if it is?
So we've worked with the ministry in regards to securing some funding for some of our religious congregations in the city. So we've helped them secure some funds to help their place be secure. If there are national or international events that are occurring in our community, we always reach out to specific communities that may be targeted. So we do an awareness and education and offer additional resources if there is a concern based on something that's happening across the world or around the world, and then incidences to assist those individuals in responses when they are encountering that type of hate crime also.
Yeah.
And education around what hate crime is too. I think that's key.
Yeah, just, that they know that the service is aware of it.
Yes.
And we're doing everything we can. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one question that's disturbing when you read the numbers, up 72%. Is that data collection and reporting versus up 72%? Like, are you able to analyze that?
I mean, nothing, as far as I know, since the pandemic started, there's nothing that I'm aware of that's changed in the data reporting, other than services getting better at collecting data, but there wasn't anything new introduced over that time, so I would think that that is a fairly accurate number. It could depend maybe on public awareness of reporting those types of crime as well, but there is nothing that I'm aware of as far as the way we collect it that's changed significantly over the past several years.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, gotta go. All right, I'll see you soon. Thanks.
Marlene, thank you.
And here there is a very interesting report about the hate crime and cybercrime specifically throughout the pandemic on the Statistics Canada website that is available for public access. That shares some really interesting.
It's disturbing, but thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate you trying to present this to us. When do we see this as annual?
Yes, yes, it is.
The data is released by Statistics Canada for year end in usually July or August.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you very much, Nicole.
Back to you, Chief, please, to give us an update, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's always wonderful to be able to highlight some of the things that have occurred within the Barrie Police Service, and we're looking at September, so we have highlights from June, July, and August for us. And also, Chair, thank you for taking a moment of silence at the beginning of our meeting today. On behalf of the Barrie Police Service, I would like to acknowledge that several tragic event deaths have sadly impacted our community, our policing community, and our nation. And if we go back to Sunday, August the 28th, while conducting a missing persons investigations, members of our service located a fatality involving a single motor vehicle collision, which had claimed the lives of 6 of our young people in our community. This was a terrible and very tragic event that affected our entire community. And our thoughts continue to be with the family, friends, and the first responders who attended the scene as they deal with this tragic loss. And we extend our deepest condolences to the family and loved ones of the victims. You also spoke in regards to Constable Andrew Hung, who was a 22-year veteran of the Toronto Police Service, who was killed while taking part in a joint training exercise in Peel Region. That senseless act has impacted the entire policing community, and those that also are tragically impacted, such as the community member who has lost his life and a few individuals that have life-altering injuries. So our thoughts go out to Constable Hung's family, and the families of the other victims were affected by these violent acts. And even yesterday, we did lose a member of our police community, Constable Gillespie, who died in a single motor vehicle collision as he was attending to his work. And our deepest condolences go out to the Gillespie family, friends, and colleagues. I'll just turn over to our calls for service in June. This is a slide that we provide to the board during our meetings, and it's a monthly calls for service. And all of our occurrences that are generated through the computed aided dispatch. And we highlight some of our call types as they first enter into our system. So when we look at June, we had over 6,000 occurrences that were generated, and we also received 381 self-reported incidences through our CopLogic system, and we continue to encourage and expand on the criteria for self-report. So those that are listening in the community, please make use of our CopLogic system. When we go to July, and then we go to August, we have experienced 2 very, very busy months with over 6,500 occurrences in those months. I'd like to highlight a few investigations that occurred since our last board meeting. And on July the 14th, we had our investigators returned a 25-year-old male from the island of St. Kitts for the offenses of attempt murder and aggravated assault. And this goes back to a stabbing incident in Barrie in July of 2019. Shortly after the stabbing occurrences, 2 suspects were identified and a warrant was taken out for both of those arrests. And in September of 2019, 1 suspect was arrested by the Toronto Police Service. And over the next couple of years, our investigators worked diligently and were able to track the second suspect's movement through South America and the Caribbean, and was arrested in St. Kitts in November of last year. So we have made arrangements since November to July on extradition back to Canada of this individual, and it did occur a couple of months ago. If we go to July, also the 22nd, a 24-year-old Quebec individual was arrested and charged in relation to numerous frauds that are being referred to as the Grandparent scam frauds. So between July the 18th to July the 22nd, it is believed that over $90,000 was lost to this scam, and the accused in this instance was claiming to be a police officer and a court employee and had requested money from the victim, saying that their grandchild was in trouble and needed cash for bail purposes. Investigators from our fraud unit were able to arrest the man as he attempted to collect money from one of the victims in our community. He is now facing multiple fraud-related charges, including fraud over $5,000 and possession of property obtained by crime. The next day, on July the 23rd, officers responded to a North End scene after a 21-year-old male was shot. The male was airlifted to a Toronto area trauma unit for non-threatening injuries. The police located the suspect after they executed a search warrant at a nearby resident, and a 28-year-old male is now facing charges related to aggravated assault, assault with a weapon, and numerous firearm-related offenses. At the end of August, on the 30th, our officers responded to a complaint of a suspicious vehicle in a parkade, and our officers located a vehicle. They spoke to the individual who provided a false name to the officers, and during the investigation, officers located in that vehicle a loaded firearm, a large quantity of currency, suspected drugs including cocaine, crystal meth, and heroin. A 21-year-old Markham man was arrested and charged with obstructing police, firearms, property, and numerous drug-related offenses. And I was going to highlight the work that was conducted by the traffic unit in some joint initiatives, and Deputy Allen has spoken to that. It's always nice when we have new members join the Barrie Police Service. Our family is growing, as we say, and we welcome July the 11th, 10 new special constables to our team. And our special constables work in numerous areas within our organization. But as they join our team, the majority of their work is spent with our court services unit, providing prisoner care, prisoner transport, and court security details. And then on your right-hand side, we're introducing 15 new police constable recruits that have just headed off to the Ontario Police College earlier this month, and we will see them redeployed to our service in approximately 3 months. They'll return here, have some additional training, Barrie Police Service focused, and they will be deployed on the road in January with their coach officers. So I think that will assist our response in the community to what we're experiencing. And we have our award ceremony in May, and the board members are present. But as we worked through the summer, we continue to present some of the medals, pins, and awards to our sworn and civilian members that were unable to attend our award ceremony. And it is always an honor to recognize those dedicated members of our service. So always a highlight. And as we've spoken before, we have some initiatives that I'd like to highlight. We have our evidence-based policing initiative, and at the end of July, we launched a new test design for our Barrie Police cruisers. So there are 3 cruisers out in our community that have the half Battenberg pattern, and this was created in the UK, this pattern, to enhance the visibility and recognition of police officers by reducing the likelihood of collisions, encouraging motorists to drive more carefully with this high presence, and we're hoping that it also deters the opportunity or the reduction of crimes committed in our community. So we will be out in the community, and we will be conducting research in this area on the impact of that. And very happy to announce in July our mobile crisis response team, and that is Barrie Police and the Royal Victoria Regional Centre is working together. We have a mobile crisis worker and one of our officers. They're responding to 911 calls relating to mental health and addictions, as well as people in crisis. So this is a 6-month pilot project that is financially supported by the Barrie Police Service and RVH, and our goal is to minimize police and hospital interactions through enhanced de-escalation, crisis management, intervention, triage options, and follow-up care and support to those suffering with mental health related concerns in our community. And highlighting on the left-hand side of the screen, we had Elder Ernestine joined the Barrie Police Service in our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee as we host events, lunch and learn opportunities, and she spoke to us about the significance and meaning of the medicine wheel. And we continue to conduct research within the Barrie Police Service. And in August, we had members of the University of Alberta facilitated some research interviews with those that had been arrested and lodged in our facilities. And the research is focused on broad concepts around the perception of the body-worn cameras and how individuals are treated while they are in our custody. So we will be looking forward to some of the results of that. And we have spoken and continue to speak about the Community Safety and Wellbeing Unit, and we trialed 2 electric vehicles, and we're hoping to determine through this trial if it is supportive of having electronic bicycles in our community. Are we being more effective as we respond to issues within our community? And we look at some of the work that we're doing in collaboration with some of our other service partners. Our Marine unit participated in a joint rescue training days with Barrie Fire and Emergency Services and the Transport and Rescue Squadron 8 with CFB Trenton. And this training is imperative for our marine operators to minimize the risk when they're involved in water-related rescues. And on the right-hand side, as the board is responsible for our strategic plan, our strategic planner, Dana Stott, was out with her team, engaging with the community and consulting with our community as we speak to our new strategic plan for 2023 to 2025. And she was there during the farmers market, open air Dunlop, and a town hall meeting where we're looking for feedback, thoughts, and those that are joining us remotely, if you wish to send input to our Barrie Police Service info email box, I open that opportunity for you if you have any ideas in that area. And then I'll end with a couple of community events and some community spirit events. We had on August the 15th, many of us attended City Hall for the flag raising ceremony, recognizing the 75th Indian Independence Day. And then on August the 26th, Staff Sergeant Mike Wynn attended the Am Shalom congregation for an evening where they reinducted the Torah to speak to raising awareness and understanding of the different culture traditions that make our city a very diverse and wonderful place to be. We also partnered with the City of Barrie on the city's EMSA Emergency Medical Services Camp Day, and they learned a little bit from our special constables and constables in a very fun, relaxed forum. And then we also had a meet and chat with the Barrie Police Service on our Kids Learn to Fish Day also. And just a few little community events. We participated in Community Day hosted by the YMCA at the East Bayfield Community Center, and our special constable Shannon, who's developed many of our programs for youth. She attended the Painswick Branch Library for story time. And then some of our other highlights. Not sure if you notice one of our board members there in Walk a Mile in her shoes. Very dapper there, sir. But many of our members go beyond their working hours and volunteer their time and donate funds and items of important causes. And we see that with our donation bins throughout our headquarters, where we're looking for food drives, clothing drives. We participate in blood drives and other community events that really speak to the spirit of giving in our community. And in June, we tied up our laces and did our annual torch run in support of Special Olympics, and it was their 35th anniversary. And we had the run, and then we followed it up with a pizza lunch with our Special Olympians. And our members purchased T-shirts, and the funds directly go to the Special Olympic events. And on September the 10th, I already highlighted Walk a Mile in her shoes. That was done in support of the Women and Children's Shelter. And I guess the question is, did you have any blisters?
Yeah.
Perfect. And one of the other things that I'd like to draw your attention to, we had a request from a member in the community in regards to the Ukrainian refugees families coming to our community, and a mighty team from our service. You met Nicole and you deal with Danielle all the time, and Catherine Chittick were instrumental in not just housing one apartment building, but the generous donations of all of our members and the work by the team. We fully outfitted 2 apartments for the refugees coming to our city. And not only did they have a nice apartment to come into that was fully furnished, but we had some of our members make handmade quilts. So it was a little welcoming for those individuals. So people in our service are volunteering and donating their time, and I just wanted to highlight some of that because I'm truly honored to continue to be impressed by all of the generosity of our members as we witness regularly by members of the Barrie Police Service. And this is a time for me to thank them for all the work that they do. And that's our 3-month update to the board.
Well, that's a nice way to finish your update.
Yes.
Thanks very much. Greenwood, are there questions for the chief of the board, please? Mr. Khan, please.
Real quick one, Chair, Chief, thanks for the report. I love it. The information regarding your calls was much earlier in your presentation, the calls for service, et cetera, and your breakdown. I'm just curious, what is our utilization of a 211 system, and how are we getting effective use out of it, and how does it impact the numbers that are on the screen or not?
So the 211 is available for the broader community within Simcoe County, and the city of Barrie also has Service Barrie to support those needs in the community. I will need to follow up on the results of 211. I know that there has been significant work done in promoting the awareness around that. That's a separate entity to us, so I would have to follow up to see the utilization of that, and then we would have to assess if that has impacted the calls for service we have received.
Thank you, Chief. That was my question behind the question, was any opportunity for appropriate call diversion through education. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, one question real quickly. The mobile crisis response team, is the officer normally in uniform or all clothes, plain clothes?
So we do have our mobile crisis response, and we do have our other coast program too. So they're two separate entities.
Probably what I'm thinking of.
One we work with CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association, and this one is a new mobile crisis response. So, and that is with a nurse practitioner.
That's what I confused. Thank you. Our next board meeting is October the 20th. Before I motion to adjourn, just to remind those that may be watching, December the 8th is the Chiefs Gala in support of the Child Youth Advocacy Center. I dropped one of the words that's in the title. A motion to adjourn.
Motion. So moved.
Thanks everybody for your time and your efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.